Good.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the March 31st, 2021 Town of Colonie Zoning Board of Appeals to order. A quorum being present, I'd like to ask our board members to please take a look at the minutes from our March 17th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Nick, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are hereby approved. Thank you very much. Our first item of business tonight is to pick up where we left off a few weeks ago on 1 Nickleby Court. We had adjourned that hearing at that time, but we left it open. In the interim, I think everyone has received a significant information on both sides of this issue to ponder our discussion through. What I'd like to just advise the board that, and we will definitely consult this as we go forward, that once we hear from the applicants, if there's anything new that they want to contribute, my intention is to make a motion to actually dismiss the applicant's need for the variance due to the regarding the fence, because the provisions of installing a fence do not violate the buffer zone requirements. So just so everybody knows, that's the kind of action I'd like us to consider, and we can vote against it, vote for it, whatever, but that's the kind of thing based on a lot of the materials we've gotten and speaking with legal counsels on this, that a fence does not violate a construction within a buffer zone under the Town of Colonie land use laws. So having said that, I think, Michael, is there anything you want to add at this time before we
No, why don't we let the applicants add anything they want to, and then we'll go to discussion, Jim. So.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So the applicant, Victor?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Thank you.
Very well. So as Mr. Chairman knows, and the other board members and your attorney, I submitted documents via email on March 16th, which included a copy of my letter dated March 16th, a copy of my client's letter, who's with me tonight, him and his wife, a copy of the certified survey for Mr. Elliott's lot at 7 Eva Street, a copy of the 2004 ZBA decision with the conditions, a copy of the site plan survey of 3 Nickleby Court, a copy of the definitions from the Town of Colonie zoning code. I don't think there's a need for me to read this into the record. It should become part of the record. Would you agree, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I would, unless there's objections. We do have some letters that we will read into the record later on, Victor, when we conclude.
That's fine, but I mean, I just want to make sure that all the board members have received what I submitted and reviewed it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it was distributed.
Yes.
Okay, so I really don't have anything more to say other than the fact that based upon my research and what the statute of the Town of Colonie zoning code says, the only reason why we really had to come before the board is to seek permission to get approval to remove the dead and dying trees that are within the buffer area, because as the board knows, the 2004 variance that I was a part of, and I did it for the owner of the property, clearly indicated that there could be no cutting and no building within the buffer area. I showed the board pictures of dead and dying trees. At the last meeting, I showed the board pictures of some of those trees that had fallen down onto my client's property in the building, house building. And I think the board had a pretty clear understanding of what we were looking for. But as far as the fence is concerned, I don't think that there's any need for a variance. A fence is included in the definition of buffer, and it clearly is not a building as it's not within the definition in the Town of Colonie of building. So that's our position. I don't want to rehash what we've already been through. I think the board members and your attorney is well aware of what's going on here, and that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, Victor. Any questions for Victor this time, or should we go on to the folks who are concerned about this in opposition? Okay, Kim, who do we have logged on this particular case?
Let's see. It looks like Mr. Brick is here.
Okay, thank you.
Tim Elliott, I think he's part of this application.
Yes.
Okay,
And there is a phone number. I'm unaware of who that is, and I don't have their
All right.
name.
who of Mr. Brick, Mr. Elliott, who'd like to go first?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I heard what you said that how this may proceed. I would just, for clarification purposes, the application requests 4 specific items. Installation of a vinyl fence, removal of dead trees, removal of scrub trees, and the placement of arborvitaes. So based upon where it looks like this is going to go with the fence, the fence clearly can be allowed in the buffer based upon that definition. Not going to waste time fighting that. The dead trees, it's my understanding, PEDD or building department has already approved the removal of dead trees. Fine, not going to fight that. Installation of arborvitaes, great, not a problem. Our suggestion would be install arborvitaes as the barrier rather than a fence. The one concern I want to raise and seek some clarification is the request of the applicant is to remove scrub trees. One, I think that's vague. I don't know what that means. But the bottom line is it's a no-cut buffer. So if the applicant is requesting relief from the no-cut buffer, that would be to me what removal of scrub trees entails. If the applicant is removing his application or withdrawing application or it's being dismissed, then I think it should just be clear on the record that removal of scrub trees or any type of trees, I don't know what scrub trees are, is still prohibited in the no-cut buffer. And that would include removal of trees to allow for the fence. Unless the applicant's requesting relief, if it's going to be dismissed, I just want to make it clear that there's no authority to remove any type of tree, whether it be scrub or otherwise, based upon the conditions of the Hughes application. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you very much for the opportunity again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Victor, we'll come back to you for comment on that particular point after we hear from Mr. Elliott.
Well, my position continues to be that the quid pro quo here back at that initial meeting was the neighbors on the outside were supposed to get the benefit of this no cut, no build zone. In exchange for that, the builder and the owners of Nickleby Court got to put in 3 lots instead of 1. So if we allow them to put fences up, blocking us from the buffer zone, then we're looking at a fence instead of a buffer zone. So we've lost our quid pro quo. What do we need a quid pro quo for? What do we need a buffer zone for if all we could see is the fence? So what did we get out of that by agreeing to this 3-lot subdivision if you can just put a fence up and block the view of the buffer zone anyway?
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak against the variance at this time? Hearing none. Victor, would you care to react to what Mr. Brick and Mr. Elliott comments on? I mean, you know, just to be clear, I reread the application variance, and it just talks about construction of a 6-foot fence and planting of arborvitae within the no cut, no building area. I don't see anything about scrub trees or the like. So I'm just wanted to, Victor, could you address that for us, please?
Absolutely. I want to make it very clear to the board and to Mr. Brick and Mr. Elliott that there is going to be no removal of any scrub brush. The only thing that we're asking to remove are the dead and dying trees, period, and construct. There are vines that are killing the dead or some of the trees, and I think that may be what Mr. Brick was referring to when I said scrub brush. The only thing that would be removed would be the dead or dying trees and the vines that are attached to some of these trees that may still be alive that are going to die with these vines that are growing up. And that's it, nothing else.
Thank you, Victor. Because it's our custom, we do have 2 letters from neighbors that I will read into the record. This first one is from Eugene Demsar, My name's Eugene Demsar, and I live in Latham at 9 Eva Street, which is directly behind the property at 1 Nickleby Court with adjoining property lines. This is in reference to the notice I received regarding the ZBA meeting on 3/31 regarding the change to the no cut, no build area between my address and 1 Nickleby. Although I do not want to dictate how a neighbor legally uses their land, I do not want to suffer any loss of value or pleasant use of mine either. I bought my house in 2015, and one of the attractive points was the wooded area bordering the back of the property. It gave a country feeling in a suburban area. There was no other house in Eberly that I also was considering at the time. It also had a wooded area to the rear of the property, but I settled on buying 9 Eva, the wooded area being one of the determining points. This no cut, no build area is in essence a designated barrier, such as a fence or wall, but within the specific notion of being a natural wooded barrier. I do not know the history of the no cut, no build area of 1 Nickleby Court, but it was when I bought my property, and to me, it conveyed a benefit that I believe I paid for when I purchased my house. I would like to maintain that benefit and pass it on to the next owner of 9 Eva Street if I decide to sell it in the future. In my opinion, allowing a 6-foot privacy fence would take away from the country feeling and would not add to any actual privacy. Although I do not have a say in the house that is being built at 1 Nickleby, it's a ranch with a very high roof line. Adding a fence to the view will make the scene more of a commercial building, as the 6-foot privacy fence will basically showcase the large roof in the view as seen from my house and from the intersection of Eva and Hillcrest. I believe that all parties prior to the onset of the no cut, no build restriction made the agreement knowingly and voluntarily. This agreement was set to move forward into the future and sanctioned by the town of Colonie. Subsequently, I bought my house with the expectation of a wooded privacy to the rear of the property based on there being a no cut, no build area. I do not want to lose the visual effect and the natural privacy afforded to me by the no cut, no build provision. Thank you for letting me voice my concerns. And again, that was from Eugene Demsar at 9 Eva. And the other letter we received was from Phil Barnett at 15 Eva. It's my understanding, I understand this is being submitted a day late from the published deadline, but I attempted to utilize the link and blah, blah. Okay, sorry about that, Kim. As one of the only original property owners adjoining Mr. Brown's property that still lives in the neighborhood, I was present at the hearings when Mr. Brown originally acquired the property and was, after several zoning meetings, granted a variance to build 3 large properties on a private keyhole subdivision, a dozen or so smaller properties with a town road the area was originally plotted for. I lent my verbal support to that proposal at the meetings once for the Forever Wild border was established as part of the variance. It pleased us to have less proposed traffic through our neighborhood for future houses, and the Forever Wild border preserved some of the woodland feel behind our property, which is one of the reasons we chose our house. As such, I do not lend my support to the new variance he is seeking for the establishment of a 6-foot fence and arborvitae wall along the border of our properties. One large tree that grows across the border between our properties would make that impossible to begin with, but I would not like to stand in my backyard and view a fence. If I wanted to, I would have put one up myself like several of my neighbors. My property borders the mostly wooded area of his land to the east of his house. Therefore, once the spring foliage is in bloom, will all but be hidden from his new house to begin with. So I see no reason to mar the natural beauty with a fence. The most I would ever support would be a 4-foot green-colored chain link fence placed directly on the border, as it would be almost invisible once the trees and bushes are in bloom and would preserve the feel of a Forever Wild area. But this is not what is being proposed, and thus I would cast a no vote to the variance request. Thank you, Phil Barrett. Board members, any further questions or discussion at this time for either the applicant or the neighbors of concern or Mr. Brick?
Jim, I just have a question. Would they be willing to compromise on the size of the fence as suggested, maybe a smaller fence, maybe even a green to make it blend in? I remember I had a green fence at my home and got rid of my wooden fence and wanted to replace it. And I used the green, and it's clear. You look right through it and it looks nice, and you still have a fence and you still have privacy. So your yard is still closed in. I just wonder if they had any discussions about that.
I don't have to have a variance or fence, so I'm not going to agree to something I don't need to.
Victor?
Well, as our position is that a fence is, we don't need a variance to put the fence up. There hasn't been any discussion to have a smaller fence. He's looking to put up a 6-foot high fence. It's permitted in the town. We don't need a variance for it. I've already indicated that he's not going to remove any brush other than the dying trees and vines. So the answer is he has not considered a smaller fence or a shorter fence.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown is here. I mean, I've just talked.
Oh. Thank you, Victor. Any other members have questions or issues to bring up at this time?
If I may, Jim, Dave, to your point, I think the appropriate solution would be, why not an arborvitae fence, a row of arborvitaes acting as a fence instead of an actual man-made fence?
You know, Tim, in all honesty, I think that's something that, as my colleague David would encourage the neighbors to talk about this, because it's clearly a permitted fence under the town law. So we would encourage the neighbors to get together and try and come up with some kind of a amenable solution that serves both the owner's desires and those of his neighbors. But that's not something I think it was within the purview of the board. Is that correct, Council Gary?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, Council Michael, do we need even to entertain a motion at this time? We're gonna, in essence, we're denying the building department's denial, if you will.
It's basically an interpretation, Jim. And so, yes, I think we should take a vote on the situation and basically indicate that we don't believe that it's required, but we have no problem with reiterating that the buffer as described by the applicants here should remain. So.
Thank you, Council. Well, then I'll go back to my original comments earlier that I'll make a motion that we dismiss the applicant's need for a variance, since the installation of a fence on his property does not violate the provisions of the buffer area.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. Michael, does that capture the essence of what?
Yes, we're basically saying that we're not regulating the fence in the buffer.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean the buffer doesn't exist between the neighbors.
Right. Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. We'll move to a vote. Member Swanson?
Motion.
Thank you, Member Rosenthal.
With the motion.
Thank you, Member Hong.
With the motion.
Thank you, Member Vigiani.
With the motion.
Thank you, Member Nardilillo.
With the motion.
Thank you, and the chair votes with the motion. I want to thank everyone's patience for dealing with this complicated issue initially, but I think due to the work that the lawyers have done on this, it's become very clear to us that we really don't have any jurisdiction on this one. So again, our thanks to everybody for participating in this.
Thank you.
We will move on now to our next item of business. My only comments will be that we've seen this before, but this is a new applicant, a new application. Is that correct? Town building department people? Yes, the talking heads. And I will read this into the record. This is 14 and 16 Vermont View Drive. Take notice that the Town of Colonie Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a televised hearing on the 31st of March 2021 at 7 p.m. The proposed is a request from Luigi Palaschetti, PE, doing business as engineers for the interpretation of the previous denial, for an interpretation of the previous denial from the Zoning Board of Appeals dated October 22nd, 20. The proposed new construction for the premises located at 14 and 16 Vermont View Drive of a 16-unit apartment building on 2.8 plus or minus acres in a multi-family residential zoning district exceeds the allowable 6-unit per acre as specified in the Town of Colonie Land Use Law, Article 5, Sections 190-25 and 190, Attachment number 2, Note number 7. To protect the public safety during the state of emergency triggered by COVID-19, this public hearing will take place via video conference. Public comments may be submitted by email. Comments submitted will be read aloud by the chairman during the hearing, and any member of the public wishing to listen and view this meeting, please refer to the town's YouTube channel. This is we have to do a seeker action on this one. It's a unlisted seeker action, and we do have the publication of notifications on file. I believe everyone's got an extensive background materials on this case also. So we'll, now keep in mind, I think if and please, Mr. Paleschi, correct me if I'm wrong, and council too, they are looking for an interpretation as to why we denied the original hearing from October.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, and please, I will, my colleagues will remind me, we denied it because 16 was exceeded the density levels that were prescribed by the town law, and that if they wanted to have 16, they'd have to somehow increase their lot size so it exceeded 3 acres. And the only way to do that would be to tear down the house. We had that discussion at great length several months ago. So I think that was basically the justification for the denial that was made at that point in time. Michael, was there anything else to add to that?
Well, the hardship doesn't exist unless it's self-created. So that's the other issue. So
thank you. So
I guess
go ahead, Luigi. Thank you. You're on.
All right, thank you. Luigi Palesci with ABD Engineers. Also with us is Robert Cordell. We're both representing Robert Abatello for this project, as you mentioned, 14 and 16 Vermont View Drive. As you recall, we were before this board back twice on September 17th, 2020 and October 15th, 2020. And as we read the denial seemed like it was specific to section 190-25 and 190 attachment number 2, note number 7. So I guess what I'd like to do is, if I can share my screen, I'd like to just, pop up the zoning, and if we could just go through that and, really look at note number 7 and note number 8, because note number 7 really applies when you're subdividing into single family and 2-family. And then note number 8 is referring to the multifamily development, which is what we're proposing to do. When we were before you guys, yes, we were proposing 16 new apartments, and we realized at that time we did need a variance, and from the discussions, 16 new units was denied. So what we've made application for here is we're revising our application, and we're proposing 15 new apartments. And there is an error on the public notice. It says 16, but it's really 15 new apartments for the project here. So if I could, I'd like to bring up the plan, because when you look at note number 8, let me see if I can pull this up here. One second. So note number 8, where it states that, for multifamily development, we're allowed to 6 units per acre. And the key note here that we would like interpretation on is the allowable number of dwelling units for the entire development shall be determined by the area of the original lot. So our original lot is 2.79 acres. And if you take the density calculation of 6 units per acre, we're really allowed 16.74 units, okay? So with the 16.74 units, we're only proposing 15 new plus the single family. So that's why, we've revised our application here. We figured we would come in for an interpretation, to better understand, the denial, so that we can hopefully move forward with this, this proposal with the planning board. So I don't know if Bob, if you have anything else that you'd want to add, Bob Cordell, go ahead, or otherwise we can just continue discussion with any more questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Bob. Interesting.
Is my mic on now?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, thank you. Luigi, if you could, my name is Robert Cordell. I'm assisting Luigi Palesci in this case. Luigi, could you put that footnote back on your screen? So in the original denial of the original zoning verification and the language upon which the denial of the previous variance was denied on. It was denied based on footnote 7 of this table that we're all looking at now. Frankly, I don't believe footnote 7 applies. If we take it apart, it says in an MFR district, a lot conforming to the minimum dimensional requirements contained in this table may be subdivided for development of single family or two family residences. We're not subdividing it for the development of one family or two family residences. We're subdividing it for the development of multifamily residences. The single family residence is already existing. Plus, if we go on further in footnote 7, it really is giving the planning board leeway to establish smaller size lots that would be more in line with the lots that are in conservation overlay districts. This is a tool to give the planning board some latitude in developing 1 and 2 family homes in a multifamily residential zone. In my opinion, it is not the correct footnote to be using for the development that we're trying to do. But that's what it was denied on, and that's what you denied the variance for. So if it's not the correct one to use, then we have a technical problem with both the original denial and possibly the variance denial. Footnote 8, in my opinion, is the one footnote that should be taken into account here. If we, Luigi, just scroll up to the chart again for me. Can you blow that up so that the base residential density is bigger? The base residential density is 6 units per acre, and there's a footnote 8 there. Okay, so I would like to go back to footnote 8 now, Luigi. Can you make it a little bigger for me? Not that much. That's good. Footnote 8, where a lot is proposed to be subdivided for development of multifamily dwellings, which is what we're doing, the allowable number of dwelling units for the entire development shall be based on the size of the original lot, which means the combined parcels before they were split, including any part of the original lot to be set aside for public or private roadways, open space, recreation areas, or other such uses. It says the density on any individual lot in such development may exceed 6 units per acre, provided that the average density for the entire development does not. That's a lot of words. But what it says to me is we have a lot that we're subdividing for multifamily dwelling purposes. The density on the entire parcel is based upon the area of the lot before it's subdivided. And we can have more density than 6 units per acre on one of the lots, as long as the average density on both of them doesn't exceed 6. Now, to me, that's what it says. To me, that's the footnote that's applicable here. And if we use that footnote and we apply the footnote to the plot plan that we have, we need no variance. Our average density is 16. The computation says it can be 16.98. What we're asking you to do is to take a look at these 2 footnotes and determine which one applies. Really all I have.
Thank you, Bob. Definitely food for thought, gentlemen. Michael, do you want to comment, or should we hear from the building department first?
Well, just my one comment was, assuming the entire parcel is 2.73, that also includes the existing single-family home.
Correct, which is a dwelling unit. So 1 plus 15 is 16, Michael.
Well,
I pull up the site
math,
plan?
Maybe Don, I know Don has looked at this on the math wise. Donnie, what do you have to say? So,
Well, the thing is the single family home is on a separate lot. I mean, they subdivided a portion of the parcel from 14 to add to 16 to create the apartment complex. So I don't know, their submission is kind of confusing as to why they're including the single family home into the unit quantity when it's on a separate parcel, what's going to be considered a separate parcel.
If I could just interrupt you, Don, it's a lot line adjustment, which is a subdivision. So we are subdividing to create that larger lot.
Right, but what you're looking to do is create an apartment building. So
multifamily.
that single family home is on a separate parcel. I understand the lot line adjustment, but it should not be incorporated in your.
But it's single family in a multifamily district.
Sure, but that's not what's.
That's what the footnote says.
Right.
What the issue is the apartment building, and right on your site plan it says 16 units, 2 stories with walkout basement. So that's what the denial was for. So it's not clear. It's kind of confusing how you're saying it's 15 units at the apartment and then you're including the single family home when the site plan itself says 16 units right on it. So
no, it doesn't. That you must be looking at the old site plan. The site plan that was resubmitted back on, I think it was January of this year, has been revised to 15. I can share it on the screen.
Okay, well, what you submitted for your follow-up here was for an interpretation. So there was no follow-up denial. This submission was for an interpretation of the initial denial. So I wouldn't cite anything for what you just submitted now. You requested an interpretation of the initial denial, which was based on 16 units, which was based on the initial site plan. If you submitted something new, then maybe you should have submitted for a new zoning verification altogether for a 15 unit.
Is my mic still live?
Yep. Yes, Bob.
So I agree with that part of it, Don. But what we're trying to do is get from footnote 7, which was cited as the reason for the denial, and go to footnote 8, which is, in my opinion, the proper one to be using.
Bob, Bob, I don't disagree with you in theory. I think what Don, and at least to me, and I appreciate the comments from our other board members here and Michael, that this is actually a new application calling for 15 rather than 16 apartment units, and you're asking it to be reinterpreted using footnote 8 rather than footnote 7. So in essence, it's a new application. It's gone beyond the interpretation of the original application, which was 16 units that were applicable to the 2.32 acreage requirement, which would bring it down to 12. So, Michael, do you see it the same way at this point in time?
I think I do, Jim. It's a little similar to the, it's a new application. Should have come through the normal process. That's all. So,
well, we did reapply.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So there may have just been a little bit of confusion. So this application then should go through the process of it being denied or approved based on your new interpretation of the utilization of footnote 8.
I think
is that what you're looking for, right?
I'm looking for 2 things here. Really, we're looking for an interpretation to find out if footnote 7 is the applicable footnote, or instead, if it's footnote 8. If in fact it's footnote 8, we need no variance. We comply. The reason why you're getting a new site plan is because we have chosen to go to 16 units, including the single family now. But if the interpretation is that footnote 8 should have been the applicable footnote instead of 7, we comply with the requirements of footnote 8 today with the application before you. Doesn't need a variance.
Well, I think the explanation
Go
has
ahead,
to
Michael.
be by the building department first. If they don't want to bring it back to us, that's up to them. That's their call, Bobby, as you know. Okay, so I think Don and Joey and the department needs to sit down, and if they determine that this is a new application, then it should be applied for that way. They have to act on the modified application. I don't think they've done that. I think the denial was based upon the original application. Is that so?
No. Yeah, but go ahead.
That's correct, Counsel.
I was going to say what we had resubmitted here back in January of this year, right, was not for any variance request. Okay, we understand that the variance for this new 16 units were denied back in October. Okay, but when we were reviewing the denial and looking at these footnotes, okay, we are getting rid of the variance, and we're here to ask for interpretation or get a better understanding of footnote 7 and 8. As Mr. Cordell had mentioned, we don't believe footnote 7 applies, and looking at footnote 8
I
would
understand
not require a variance as we want to proceed.
I understand your argument, but the problem is that this is a new application, and the town building department hasn't acted on your modified application. So how do we handle an appeal when we haven't had an action by the building department on your modified application?
Well, it's not an appeal. Right. It's not an appeal. We're asking for an interpretation.
An interpretation of the building department decision, Bob. Okay.
What I'm
saying is that the decision hasn't been made yet on the modified application.
Is it possible to ask for an interpretation of the previous decision? That's what we're doing.
I understand.
Because we don't believe that the previous decision was based upon the correct footnote.
Well, it's water over the dam. You've made a modified application at this point in time, Bob.
Oh my God.
Who's that?
I think, it's procedurally, it's a pain in the neck to have to reapply and have the building department reassess, but that's what we've been looking at on other cases too. So,
well, Michael, wouldn't it then be prudent for the building department to re-review the application that's currently before us, taking into consideration?
I have a problem with that. And if the department comes to the same conclusion as Bob, then it doesn't have to come back in front of the board. But if in fact they have a different conclusion, then the applicant has an absolute right to have an interpretation from the board.
Oh, okay. So I guess then what you're saying, Michael, is that the building department needs to issue their opinion on the application before them, before you do an interpretation?
Yes, before the modified situation. It's a new application when you reduce your density request. So the department hasn't acted on that. They may decide, Bob, you're correct, and that you don't have to come back here, okay, to the board. So, but we don't have that decision. We only have the decision from the original application.
Let me ask a question then to clarify this. Suppose that we had come to you without a new plan and simply asked the question if footnote 7 or 8 was applicable.
Well, it's almost a motion to re-argue, Bobby, is what you're talking about, okay, at that point in time, on that consideration. Technically, I suppose we can do that. The other avenue, of course, is appeal, but you have a situation where I think technically, the department needs to act here on your modified plan or not. And that doesn't mean the board won't grant the modified application. It simply means that there's a procedural issue that I think that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, Bob, I don't think the board as lay people are qualified at this juncture to decide which is applicable, number 7 or number 8. I think we have to rely on the guidance from the building department and from our council as to which footnote is the appropriate footnote for this new revised application.
With all respect, and you know I know what you're doing, the Board of Appeals is the ultimate authority for interpreting the zoning law.
And I agree with you, but I think we need an interpretation from council before we make a determination whether 7 or 8 applies. It's no different than us asking for findings of fact.
I didn't expect a decision tonight. I don't
okay.
Okay.
But I think
what direction should we go?
Well, I think, why don't we do this? Let's put it over for a short delay. Let me have some time to deal with the building department, and we'll contact you. If in fact they agree with your consideration, Bob, then we don't have to come back. If in fact they disagree, and then you're going to need us to interpret that decision from the department, we can do that. You've been pending on this thing, so we want to move it along for you. Okay, so.
Luigi, you okay with that? I'm fine.
So here's the question: Are you trying to
check with the applicant here?
Are you trying to continue with interpretation of the initial denial, or are you trying to continue with your proposed modification? What's your intent here?
Well, I guess realistically, from what I'm gathering from this, right, we have 2 options. We could wait, or Mr. Gary, I'm thinking you're saying if I submit for a zoning verification form under the new application, which is 15 new apartment units, get that zoning verification form to Don, the building department will review it and either approve or deny the zoning verification, right? And if it's denied, then we come back here. If it's approved, we can move on to planning board.
That's the way I see it, Luigi. Yeah.
Do any other board members want to offer some thoughts on this particular quagmire?
I think that's a good compromise. Obviously, last time we determined he didn't want only 12 units, which would comply because you need more to make it a profitable business venture. But I have no problem with him going back and try with the planning board again. I think that's a good compromise.
Thank you, David.
Could we do one other thing? I know that there's been an issue here with the applicant concerning the size of the development as the availability of public water and sewer versus a private septic or system over there. Can Donnie or Joe, can you outline that for us? What's going on with that issue? Whether he can obtain, public sewers and water as opposed to private.
I would ask the agent, Luigi Pilecki, to describe that. He would be better suited.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And these are the things that, when we appeared before the zoning board back in September and October, well, October, we didn't get enough of a discussion, but back in September, we certainly discussed everything in detail. And, with the project, we are looking at extending the public sewer. We have to go all the way to Johnson Road. Before we actually made application, the applicant and I did a lot of due diligence with Pure Waters. Their sewer mains right directly in front of our lot. However, that is a private main for the existing apartment units for Valley View. And we thought we could simply connect to that. But then when we did our due diligence and met with Pure Waters, they said, you can't connect to that. You'd have to go to Johnson Road and connect to our sewer system there. So we analyzed that. We analyzed the septic system. We feel that going the sewer route would be better because, you wouldn't want, I don't think anybody would want, including the residents, would want a large septic system in the backyard of this apartment complex, because either way, whether it's 1 apartment unit or 15 apartment units, if we put a septic system back there, I think it would be better if we could just connect it to the town sanitary sewer system. So we got to extend that roughly, I think it's 650 feet from Johnson Road to our site. And then we're also taking that existing single family home from a septic system and going to connect that to the public sewer. So we are providing a public benefit. This was all stated at the September 2020 meeting. So yeah, I guess, does that answer your questions there? As
far
as
so the
versus
intent,
septic?
Regardless of any decision, Luigi, what you're saying is you want to go public sewer, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Have you spoken to the owners, general manager at Valley View to connect with them at all?
So it's not allowed because you would need a transportation corporation when you tie into someone else's private sewer system. The town did give us an option to convert the private sewer to a public sewer, but that would be much more costly because the system has been in, it's never been inspected, and that's why Pure Waters hasn't taken it over. And if Pure Waters were to take it over, then we would have to analyze the entire system throughout the existing Valley View apartment complex, which, you know, if there's any flaws or deficiencies, then we would be responsible to fix them before that got turned over to the town. So that became really messy. And, you know, I think after several discussions with Pure Waters, we, you know, we kind of agreed that, yeah, I think it makes sense to just extend it from Johnson Road. And we, you know, we did our due diligence again with the surveying. We've got everything surveyed to the point where, you know, we could provide the gravity system that Pure Waters was asking for.
So you're saying regulations prohibit you from asking or trying to tie into Valley View's existing systems?
Yeah, it's very difficult to do. As I said, with the transportation will need to be created, and that involves the Attorney General's office. So instead of going that route, you know, we would just tie into the extending the sewer system, and Pure Waters was okay with that.
So if Valley View built it, for example, Valley View put an additional building there, somewhere in there, they would have to go through the same thing as you're doing for more permission?
No, because they own that private lateral and they're connecting their own private stuff. It's when you have more than one entity. So like Mr. Abatello's one entity, Valley View's another entity. You can't have two entities tie into one private lateral or one line.
Seems a lot of work to do when you've got a system right in front of you that
I know that's
and a lot of cost. Not only a lot of work, but a lot of cost.
Right. Yes.
I mean, if they can handle, Valley View at one time was the largest apartment complex in the area, and it would seem that their system could easily take care of 16 more units.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. But you know, this is the best option moving forward. You know, but that's why, you know, we're here to try to understand the whole picture and would like to move forward with the project.
Okay. Thank you, Luigi. Thank you, David. Anybody else at this juncture? Any question? I just have one quick question. Looking at the site map, and I don't want to belabor this point, you know, one of the concerns that a lot of the neighbors had been raising was the removal of a lot of trees, and it was going to create a dramatic visual change from Peachum down to your project. On the site plan, by the stormwater management area is indicated on the plan, and then you have indicated lawn and scattered trees.
Yeah, if I could pull the site plan up, we could look at it together.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and here's an overview just for our neighbors to look at. You can see the house just barely there, and you can see the houses up on Peckham, and like how many of those? How much of those trees are you planning to remove, I guess is the question I have.
Yeah, so you know, it goes back to whether we're proposing septic or tying into the sanitary sewer, right? So a septic would require more of those trees to be removed. But if we connect to the sewer, we can save a lot of those trees along the end. So if I could just share my screen, I'll pull up.
Please.
I actually have an aerial as well.
Good, thank you. I just want to, just for the benefit of the board, so we have a better understanding.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I had it ready to discuss, but I didn't know how much detail we were going to get into. Wrong way. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll turn our heads.
Okay, so this is the proposal we'd like to move forward with. You know, it's 15 units. This is what the planning board had also seen. They actually wanted us to push the building a little bit further back, but you can see the surveyed tree line that I have here. I'm kind of tracing it right now. So that's the existing tree line, okay? the stormwater, and the rest is just, it's scattered trees and you know, more open than it is wooded along the perimeter. And what we'd like to do is, if we can move forward with this proposal, the stormwater management area would be within that opened area, and we wouldn't have to go right along the perimeter. So these perimeter trees would remain at the rear. You can see here where the existing Valley View apartments are, in order to get the parking spaces in, and we would clear these trees up to the property line. And even so, you know, you can see the existing Valley View apartments, their pavement is slightly over the property line, but, you know, we would just, you know, have to remove some of these trees in here in order to get the parking lot and the grading in that area. So, but, you know, but to answer your main question here, you know, this layout does consider, you know, the best buffer options for the residents on Peachman. And we're actually, the way that the building is designed is, you know, there, as you know, or as I mentioned earlier, it does slope from front to back, okay? And the way that the building is designed, we've got it designed where we actually have a walkout basement to make grade, because if we don't, then we would need to fill the back area here. And when you fill, then, you know, your disturbance limits get closer to the edge property lines around here. So we're utilizing the lay of the land, getting a walkout basement in there, you know, to help benefit everybody, really. I think it's a win-win situation with the public sewer extension, the way we're positioning and designing the building with the layout of the land. You've already got, you know, existing apartment units here. You know, this single family is already existing. So, you know, we're trying to keep everything in character with what's out there today, you know, and also saving these trees around the perimeter. Mm-hmm. So I hope that helps.
No, thank you. Question. Thank you, Luigi. That was, I find that helpful. Thank you. Okay. So, Michael, are we going to then adjourn this case?
I think we should adjourn for 2 weeks, and we'll meet with the building department, Jim, and determine what they're going to do. But Donnie, do you need a reapplication from the applicant to act on the modified plan?
Yeah, well, if they're going to go with a 15-unit apartment building, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we want to propose, is a new 15-unit apartment building. So we can certainly.
Yeah, so if you can get that in, Luigi, we'll get it done quickly and get you back on the calendar.
Okay.
So.
Now,
because I think when planning looked at this, Don, too, they were looking at the original 16-unit project too, when planning looked at this proposal, right?
From what I understand, Luigi, there was no change to them, correct?
That's correct. So when we presented this to the planning board, we did present 16 units, a new 16 units plus the single family, and they were fine with the density. They were fine with, you know, the general layout. The one thing that they had recommended was that we push the building further back away from Vermont View Drive. So, you know, we said we can certainly work with the planning board on exact placement of buildings and grading and so forth, landscaping. I said, and they're like, great, go to the ZBA, you know, hopefully you get your variance and then we'll see you back. So that's when we made our application to the ZBA for 16 units. And, you know, we understand that now, and, you know, that's what got us here. So we'd like to propose and move forward with the new 15-unit apartment project.
Okay.
Now, the one thing is, so you submit a new zoning verification for the 15 units. Obviously, my department's going to do a review based on the zoning and the dimensional table. When we do that review, obviously we'll take note number 8 into consideration. If we do find that it complies, I don't know if this necessarily has to come back in front of the board. So you want to do an adjournment? Can you do a contingent adjournment based on findings of the new zoning verification review, or how do you want to handle that, Chairman? It's a unique situation. I wish you guys submitted a zoning verification initially, for what you intended to do, that made it work this out a little better. So
Yeah, it got a little confusing.
Yeah.
I would think it's fair to say a contingent adjournment until the zoning department, the building department reevaluates the decision one way or the other. And if the decision is a denial, then we're back here again. And then if it's not, good luck, Luigi and Bob.
Thank you.
The next date would be April 21st. It would be April 21st. So as long as that's good.
If we have to come back.
If we have to come back, we come back. We can't come back on the next board meeting. I guess we're locked up on that agenda.
Well, that's April 7th. So that's not 2 weeks. That's less than 2 weeks away.
Oh, it is? Okay, that's next week. Okay.
Yep.
So the 7th, and then we're back on a 2 weeks cycle then. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, I think we should shoot for the 21st, and then if we have to, we can push it from there.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. So who would like to make the motion for a contingent adjournment to April 21st meeting, depending
I'll
on
make the motion.
Thank you, David. Mary seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's hereby approved then. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and energy on this one. Anything else, Don, Joe, to come before the board tonight?
Nope.
So we do have a meeting a week from tonight, correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Packets will be available
by Friday.
Thank you, Kim. By Friday. And that's about it. Anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, have a wonderful...
Talk a little bit about our CLE plan.
Oh, our CLE, yes. The dreaded CLE. We need to take a 4-hour training course or two-hour training courses sooner than later. So since we've been meeting every Wednesday, do you want to squeeze one in, say the second Wednesday in April in between our meetings maybe?
Well, if we can pick a light calendar night, that's what makes sense.
A light calendar night, okay. Do we have anything that looks like a light calendar night coming up, Kim?
We have 3 applications on the 7th and 3 applications now, potentially 4 on the 21st. And you have nothing scheduled for the 14th. We're back to 1st and 3rd.
How long is the training?
Well, it's supposed to be 4 hours, Kurt, the training. So, but part of it is, there are some video programs that are also available. But the town attorney's office has sent me some publications from the state, principally, that to discuss the board's role, ethics, that type of situation. So it's a typical review. The members who have been on for a while, things haven't changed that much. So it's going to be a little bit of a repeat of what we've heard in the past. So.
Okay, and so if that's the case, I would suggest a separate night just for training then.
Well, we've done for two, Kurt. So that's, we can work it out that way too. I think we got to get it done, Jimmy, but I don't know that we have an outside date, do we, at this time?
No, we don't have an outside date, but the sooner we do it, the better we'll all be. So we don't drag this into the summer.
Well, we hate to interfere with the summer.
And if I do say so myself, I think adult beverages will be permissible during the training session.
Didn't we go one time at the town operations center and hold a meeting there for a few years ago? Didn't they hold one at the building department?
Yes, we did.
We all came to if we had to come, and many boards came there for training at one time.
The town attorney's office did that before.
Yeah.
They would prefer if you guys can do it yourselves online. They have very limited time. They're helping out with traffic court right now and multiple other issues. So Rebecca Kennedy to do that has not retired, but moved on to another position. So we don't have an attorney that's familiar with the training, and I believe Jim and Mike can actually perform the training, so to speak, for everyone.
Plus, Rebecca's running for town council, right? Town board.
Town judge.
Town judge, rather. Town judge. So
on this training, Jim, are we drinking beer or are we going hard liquor?
I'll go and take notes.
Okay. So Kirk, you raised the issue. Do we want to do it on the 14th and just schedule it and get it over
Yeah.
with? I mean, 4 hours could it turn up to be 2 hours and 40 minutes too. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
It doesn't always last the whole time.
Right. It's more getting through the material than anything else.
This is a Zoom meeting.
We'll
correct?
discuss it. We'll work it out, and we'll get a notice out to everybody.
Okay.
So, okay. So,
fair enough. Okay. Anything else, guys?
There you go.
Joe?
No, I'm just looking for a close vote whenever you're ready.
Okay. We do have a motion to adjourn, right?
I move to adjourn.
You move to adjourn, and I think David.
I'll second. Oh, David second.
We did say all those in favor say aye. Aye. We're done.
Aye.
We'll see everybody next Wednesday. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you for everything.
No problem.
Thank you, Kim.
Good night.
Happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter. Happy.
Oh yes, happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Happy Passover.
Yep.
Same to you.
Good Friday. All kind of merges.
Bye.
Bye, guys.